In sports, we love a hot take. It's why guys like Kane Corns are continually at the top of fan engagement when it comes to what he says, how he says it, and all these things. For those that watch American sport, the amount of US sports media that is just daily content and you've got to put yourself out there in order to be relevant is so prevalent in the way that we as sports fans consume sports media. We love a spicy take. We really do. So I decided to jump on Reddit and throw it to you guys. With so much draft content that is going to be coming across this channel, I wanted to know what you guys thought about some particular draft topics. Now, you got to pick the topics in this case, and I get to go through some of the hot takes. So thank you to everyone on Reddit who participated in this trend on the AFL Reddit page, which go check that out and join that community if you haven't already, for some good, honest footy chat and good footy banter that can exist over on that page. But let's go through some of my favourites. And we've got a historical one that I think is a really interesting talking point. So let's get into that as quickly as we can. And as per usual, before we get started, like the video if you like the video, subscribe to join the Daz Talks Footy family. We are almost at 1900. Is it going to be a bit difficult to get there before grand final day? Probably, but if you could still go ahead, click that subscribe button. Doesn't cost a thing. All you got to do is click it and bang, you're done. And if you want to click that bell to notify yourself every time Daz Talks Footy uploads a new video, you can do that as well. I would really appreciate it. And also, with the massive announcement, I should say, of SD Sports having a brand now that I hope I can turn Daz Talks Footy into the realm of doing this sports stuff, sports fan content, fan-driven stuff is something that I have loved doing over the past couple of years. And now being able to do that with your best mate is just awesome. Smithy and I met in Year 10 English, and we were debating footy and cricket back then so much. It was driving our teacher insane. Shout out Mr. Donaldson. What an absolute star he was. Massive fan of Pokemon, Mr. Donaldson was. But we didn't get into too much trouble off him, and that's why we liked him so much. And from there, it's evolved now into American sports. So we're obviously footy, cricket, basketball, and NFL nuffies. Fins up 70 points on the Broncos there. They weren't riding that day. Russ was not cooking. The Finns were outstanding, but SD Sport is something that we are going to be getting up and about in both the written and the visual medium as well. All the more details to come soon. The only thing that I ask of you is if you do want to check out any of the published content, they are in the description, every single bit there. Footy, NBA, NFL, there's stuff there that you can go and consume now. And if you could go across to Twitter, okay, and look up SD Sports Inc., it's there on the screen. Just give that a follow. Participate in all the polls, and you guys are obviously going to help build this as well. It's going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to it in a big way, and I appreciate all your support during that. But let's get to the hot takes now. Stop rambling, Daz. Let's get into it. West Coast will take Harley Reid, but the Western media will bemoan the fact they didn't take the local WA player first. Reid goes on to win the Rising Star. So, of course, Daniel Curtin is the local WA lad that they're talking about there. But I agree with the first bit. West Coast are drafting Harley Reid. Those that have watched nearly everything of the draft that I've done, starting with the should West Coast trade, pick one. No, they shouldn't, and no one can convince me that they will. Daniel Curtin was pretty good in the Waffle Colts grand final. I know some Eagles fans especially are running with the this is what he did wrong more than what he did right, which is not really something that I enjoy doing for 18-year-olds, but I am more and more convinced now they're not taking Curtin at 1, and they're going to go with Reid, and I don't think they're going to trade that pick unless North get 2, 3, and 4. They get the Mackay compensation, and they've applied for that priority pick at the top of the first round as well. If that happened, West Coast should seriously go, give us 2, 3, and 4, and they could walk out of that draft with Curtin, McKercher, and the third of whoever they wanted, whether that's Watson, Dersma, or any of these guys would be extraordinary. I don't think North should give up 2, 3, and 4 for one anyway, but if you're West Coast, that's what you're asking for, so why not? Reid to go on and win the Rising Star. I mean, it would depend how the rest of the draft goes, but there are even some guys that are still eligible from last year that I think are still a rapid chance, but that might be a video for another day. But West Coast drafting Harley Reid, I couldn't agree more with. Whoever we take, being the Blues, will be the best player in the draft who should have gone top 3, but will have slid down to pick 18, and I will die on this hill. Well, it's going to be pick 16 now for the Blue Baggers after the preliminary final performance, and I like the sort of Ollie Hollands logic here where Talent-wise, he was being talked about in that upper echelon. He was never really top 5, I don't think, Ollie, but his debut season was amazing. No one in the projected top 5, I don't think, is getting to 16. That's not really an outlandish thing to say, but a youngster walking into an already established good club and good team, as Carlton were. Yes, they didn't play finals the year that Ollie Hollands was drafted, but they were 9th, ready to go. There was still a best 22 spot for him. They got him. He performed very, very well. I think Carlton could do that again. I also think Carlton should be open to trading that pick on draft day. If a guy that they really, really, really wanted is not on the board anymore, get yourself a future asset in 2023 draft, get yourself a future asset in the 2024 draft. But if you want my further thoughts on that, you can check out my first round picks that should be traded video. Gold Coast's academy kids are pretty shit and people shouldn't bid on them in the top 10. Weird. It says Bombers, and I'm kind of thinking, oh, is this like a trick thing to let Bombers? But then I'm thinking, wouldn't you want your rivals to pay premium? You know, wouldn't you want Gold Coast to pay as many draft points as you could? Wouldn't you want all 3 of them off the board before your pick came? Now, I don't think that's going to happen. By the time the Bombers pick comes in, at the most, I think it'll be 2. I don't think anyone is bidding on Jake Rogers in the top 10, top 15, definitely. But I think Essendon are going to have their pick beforehand. I think Jed Walter is going to be a home run. Not necessarily straight away. You know, you look at even the contemporary greats and even the former greats, you know, their first 50 games, they just need to keep their head above water and then you can make that jump. So by no means am I saying that Jed Walter is going to walk in and be an upfront and straight away superstar, but I think he's going to be a very good player. I think Ethan Reid could be anything, and Jake Rogers is kind of the forgotten man here, but out of the 3, I think Walter is going to be an exceptional footballer. So I disagree with the pretty shit part, and I disagree with the Bombers for some reason not wanting Gold Coast to pay more than they have to. No, charge them top dollar. They got the concessions. Make them pay for it. Most people will be salty at any AFL support for the Kangas, including but not limited to pick 3 from Mackay. I agree. Most people are going to be salty. My one regret from my North being gifted a good draft video is I think I poorly explained or maybe didn't spend enough time explaining that it wasn't North that the frustration, my personal frustration, kicks in with. It's just the club in this scenario. So my thoughts doesn't change whether it's North, Essendon, Geelong, Richmond, Hawthorn, Gold Coast, whoever it is, right? I don't like concessions. Now, the free agency rules, again, the more unequal we get, the worse that it is. Now, if you change it now, North are going to get punished. I understand that with the Mackay thing, but I think band 1 should be pick 10, and if 2 clubs are entitled to pick 10, then the worst you finished on the ladder should be your spot. But this academy stuff, I'm not a massive fan of, that, you know, you get to match bids and all that. Yeah, you got to promote player growth. I understand that. I really do. But we need to have an equal competition. I mean, my God. The more and more I think about how unequal our competition is, the less I'm enjoying the father-son rule. Like, is it great for the history? Yes. But, you know, how good teams are getting these top 10 picks gifted to them, you know, just because their parent played for the footy club. You know, it's traditional. And I still think it is a good thing. Seeing, say, you know, pick, you know, Josh Dacos, for example, seeing him in a Collingwood jumper the same as his old man, as a footy fan, does make me happy. But in analysing the game, it's unequal. So if we bemoan the inequality of our game, you have to bemoan all of it, I think. Or you're a hypocrite. Simple as that. None of the Tasmanians taken this year will return to the new Tassie team when it actually comes in. I'm going to assume you mean straight away, because you never know over the course of an entire career, but I am hearing, and I get a lot of feedback on my videos being like, Colby McKerch is, you know, going to go to Tassie, so don't, you know, waste a higher pick on him and all this crap. Because again, if players want to leave and they're not free agents, get a ransom for them. This isn't that difficult to comprehend. But I'm going to say I disagree. I think they'll get someone. They will. They're going to need big names to come in. I'm firmly of the belief that they're going to target Will Day from the Hawks because his 4-year deal's up when Tassie is supposed to become a team and he's going to be in his prime, and I think he's the kind of player that they're going to target. Doesn't matter that he's not Tasmanian, but they're going to go after guys of that ilk. But when it comes to youngsters, they are going to target every youngster from Tassie to try to bring them in for that homegrown talent. So if you're wagering that none of them are going to say yes to that, you're a braver person than I am. If you have a top 5 pick, teams should always look to split it. Too much risk on one player. Agree to disagree on this one. I look at a side like Melbourne, who, you take away all the bids and the compensation and all that, would have a top 5 pick in this draft. Melbourne are a good enough team that they can go bang for exquisite talent and do that. A side like, say, we live in an equal competition. If North only had pick 2, I agree with you. They should be splitting that pick and trying to get, 2 further ones. A little bit further back, whether it's the back end of 5 to 10. I completely agree. There are just times where bad teams need more talent rather than one talent. There's no guarantee that generational talent exists at the pick that you get, and I would much rather see clubs take a swing than take a guess. We're all guessing at the end of the day. We'd like to think we know, but there are no guarantees in footy, so I do agree with the merit of this. I've kind of tossed and turned. If Zane Dersma's not on the board for the Hawks, and Curtin's not on the board for the Hawks, I would consider moving back if we could. Maybe targeting those Bulldogs picks, maybe. Or could you finagle a deal somewhere else? Who knows? But again, if the guy you want and the guy you love is not on the board at your pick, I would definitely consider it on draft day, I should say, and trading that pick. For absolute certain, I would look at doing that. But again, right deal, you would need to know who's sort of on the board there. You feel like you can't lose. And we see what happens with the players after that. But I don't mind the idea at all, and I think more bad teams need to do it for sure. Nick Watson will be considered as a massive bust based on draft position. 170cm player going inside the top 8 is going to have some real questions asked when he struggles with the physicality of the AFL in his first few seasons. Look, logistically, I can kind of see where this take is coming from, but why does he have to struggle with the physicality? Like, Caleb Daniel, once he went to a back pocket, didn't really struggle with the physicality. Why does it need to be as physically minded in that forward half? I'm not really sure. You look at guys like Isaac Rankin and Cozzy Pickett, who are taken top 10 in their drafts. They're looking pretty good picks at the moment. So I think fans are going to go too early on the Nick Watson is a bust thing. I can kind of see where this take is coming from. But he, on pure talent, he's not a bust at all. And I don't care about his height. I care about what he can do and what he can control. And I think whichever club drafts him, and at this point I think it's either North Melbourne, Hawthorn, or GWS. Melbourne is sneaky, but, but if the Bulldogs get Gold Coast pick 4, I would absolutely put them in the shining light there too. All 4 of those clubs would want him at that pick for what he can do. So just because fans are impatient doesn't mean that he should be regarded as a bust. I don't think he'll be a bust throughout his career, but I don't think his height is really going to be a major factor at all. We don't need him being a centre half forward. We just get to the feet of the tall forwards, weave some magic. It's what the Wizard can do, and I think that's what the Wizard will do. He doesn't need to play round 1, and he'll apply his trade accordingly. But no, I'm not really in the business of calling anyone a bust, but I think his height being a detractor is really overrated, in my opinion. And a historical one to finish it off, and why he's in the thumbnail as well, but St Kilda drafting Ball over Judd cost the Saints 3 premierships. Oh, Saints fans, I'm sorry. But I think we forget, and I kind of did some research on this when I saw this take, because when the 2001 Super Draft was happening, I was 3. And it's fair to say I barely knew custard from my elbow, let alone the AFL draft, right? But there was a lot of doubt over Judd because of those shoulders. Right, so on draft day, was it the wrong call? Now, some people would be like, I watched Judd play as a junior, easily knew he'd be the best player. I'm not going to disagree with you. Okay, I'm really not. But I do know as one thing as a Hawks fan is I wouldn't have traded Hodge for Judd, and that's not based on player. On pure talent, Judd's the better player. I'm a Hawthorn fan, and I love Hodgie so much. But in that midfield, would that equate to premierships? Look, I can easily see where you're coming from. You put Judd with, Dalsano, Montagna, Hayes, these guys, Goddard, that could rotate through that midfield. Oh, that's scary. That 2009 grand final is crazy. And 2010, I'm going to assume you mean maybe 08 as well. The Saints could have won that one against the Hawks. I'm not sure if Juddy for Ball is an 8-goal swing, but I would definitely say that the what ifs, the Saints would have won at least one. What do you guys think? Have you got any hot takes that you'd like me to react to? Put them in the comments of this video. Let me know. I would really appreciate that. Can't wait to get more of SD Sports to you. Can't wait to get more draft content to you. Can't wait for my grand final preview to come out on Wednesday evening. It's going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to dissecting both teams in a big way, making my official pick, my official Norm Smith medal picks as well. Can't wait for all of that. Have a fantastic week, guys. I hope that whatever you're looking for this week, whether it's a good week at work, you might be seeing kids, whatever it is, I hope you get it. You're an absolute superstar. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Goodbye.